Okay, we're live.
All right. All right. Finally.
Okay, yeah, we had a little a technical glitch trying to do this live on
Mhm.
Substack. So this is going to be a recorded video and then published on my Substack page. So, welcome.
Thanks. Nothing like starting out with a technological bang, right?
Right. And funny, we'll be talking about technology
I
today.
know,
So
I know.
I guess it's appropriate. So I'm
Sure.
Denise Wakeman. I'm the publisher of Your Visibility Edge. And I am talking today with my good friend and colleague and collaborator over many years, Ellen Britt. And should I be calling you Dr. Ellen
No,
Britt?
please don't.
Okay, all right. Well, I like to check. I've been
It's a
called on the
technicality.
carpet for not
Well, I know, Denise, but
doing that.
in my case, I was a PA for 20 plus years. And so I couldn't use my doctorate, which is in biology, as because it was confusing to patients. They had to know I was a PA and not an MD. So that's the reason I always feel a little weird about somebody using it, even though I do have one. So there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to segue into this conversation because I'd like to, for the people who don't know you,
Yeah.
who we're introducing you to, is like I think it would be good, helpful to get a little bit of your backstory, how you
Mm.
got from PA
Yeah.
in the ER to building apps with AI. So if you could
Okay.
just, share a little bit
The
about
brief
that
story. Right, right.
background
Yeah.
and kind of what was it like for you day to day? Because I know that kind of sets up how you are
Well,
operating
it does.
today.
I was always drawn to urgent care and emergency medicine. I never really liked the idea of sitting in some internal medicine office and tweaking people's insulin dosage or their thyroid hormones. I really liked the excitement, the changeability, the challenge of working in the ER because I was thinking about this because it's really multidisciplinary. I mean, they call it ER medicine, but if you think about it, you could see anything that came in from cardiovascular problems to a kid with a bean stuck up his nose to uh, a guy who was fishing and now he's got the fish hook in his rear end. I mean, nosebleeds, pneumonia. I mean, so it's multidisciplinary, and that really, really attracted me because you just never knew what was going to walk through the door. And that being in that situation for nearly 2 decades, over and over and over and over and over, I think shaped my thinking in ways that I didn't even realize until I started getting into the AI app building thing. You can't help but have your thinking shaped by something like that, right?
Yeah, that's a very, an important and impactful job that you were doing for a good long time.
Right,
So
a long time. Right.
that definitely is going to shape you. I mean, everything we do, as far as I'm concerned, every experience we've had in our life leading to
Right.
this moment
Right.
shapes how we're thinking today, right?
Well, for sure.
So, one of the things you've talked about with me is how working in ER, you never had the full information.
Exactly. Exactly.
How did that impact making decisions?
You mean in building in when I went to build the app, how did that?
Well, starting with decision making in the ER, how that
Mhm.
started
Mhm.
forming your decision making
Right.
as you move through life. We'll get
Yeah.
to the AI bit here, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
just sort of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
set up the
all
like
right. Well, you
where are you coming from?
definitely operated on incomplete information. Even if the patient was conscious, which sometimes they weren't, or they were in so much pain they couldn't be rational and tell you anything. So then you have to rely on family members who are upset and disagreeing with each other about what really happened. And so you have to like take that, what we call the subjective information, what the patient or what the outside people are telling you, you had to kind of take that with a grain of salt. It's like, okay, this is what they're saying. let's see. And then you would, because I'm using the SOAP framework, which I recently wrote about.
Yeah, and
S is
we'll get to that in detail. Yeah,
okay. So
definitely.
that has shaped my thinking. So obviously the information is incomplete. So then you've got to rely on what else you can find out that doesn't rely on what they tell you. It's like what's their heart rate and what's their EKG show or what's the X-ray show or so those things you could look upon as being a little bit more reliable in terms of those are the things that you can trust,
They're
really,
facts.
Those are facts, just facts, right? And then you would take those two together, what the patient told you and what you could gather from your physical exam or the test you decided to order, and then make a preliminary assessment of what was going on. And sometimes that preliminary assessment was like rule out something else, rule out a stroke, or maybe they needed a CT scan, or maybe they needed a dermatology consult, or whatever it was. And then you would have some sort of temporary plan that you could carry out. And then if that didn't work well, then you had to kind of go back and loop through it again. Maybe there was another question that you should have asked the parents of the child or the patient themselves that you didn't think about beforehand. But now this has come up in some of the lab work, and it's like, have you been traveling out of the country lately? That kind of thing. But you didn't ask them that to begin with. So it's always incomplete information, which causes you, pardon me, causes you to loop back and do it again and again and again. And that's kind of shaped I'm not afraid of incomplete information. It's like, oh, well, I don't have the whole story here. Let me go see what else I can find out about this.
So
I
it's a
don't know.
constant iteration with
Yeah,
new
exactly.
information.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So coming back to today now,
Hmm.
a few weeks ago we had a conversation when you told me that you had been, working on building an app with AI, and I was like,
Right.
what?
Right. Right. Well, right. 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 What is she doing? Building
Yeah,
an app. Right.
yeah, yeah. What? Okay, I want to know more about that. And so when you started working on the app, what you've described with the ER has a similar way of progressing.
Right. Right.
So when did you first notice that that's what was happening? That this
Right.
application, this way of thinking and decision making was impacting how you were building with AI?
Pretty early on. Um, I had tried the whole kind of you got to get the right prompt to do stuff. And maybe there was this magic prompt that I could put in that would spit out what I wanted on the other side. But I've soon found out that that was not the case. Well, I'll just backtrack a minute to how I decided to even build an app in the first place.
Yes, that's good.
As you know, I decided to go back to school again and become a homeopath. This is a story I won't get into here very much, but I had a kind of unexpected sort of healing experience with homeopathy with a problem that Western medicine really couldn't offer me a solution for. And I was very impressed. So I went back to homeopathy school and became a homeopath. So then, as I was seeing people, the whole rise of AI thing, I kept seeing people say, you should just build something. You're not going to get the complete picture of what you can do, what AI is, unless you build something. And I kept thinking to myself, well, that's crazy. I can't build anything. So then I started seeing things about these companies, like Lovable and Base 44 and all the other companies that you could use to give them a prompt and that would write code for you and build an app. But I don't know. For some reason, I just wasn't. I kept reading some people who said, well, you don't really own your code when that happens, and you don't, all the back end stuff, you will understand some stuff, but you really won't understand. And all the people that I was kind of reading were talking about really getting in there and building it. But I thought, well, how can I build it? Because I'm not a coder. This is what these companies
Hmm.
do. So I'm messing around with AI. In this case, it was GPT. And I was kind of just talking to it. I stopped kind of to try to figure out this prompt and just started talking to it. It's like, hey, is there any other way to do this? And it said, well, yes, there is. Would you like me to tell you about it? And of course I said, well, sure,
Oh,
let's go. Let's go. I'm all
do
ears, you know.
tell.
So it said, Ellen, has to use your first name, and they get you to lean in. And it said, you could build this on your own computer. And I went, huh? What are you talking about? And it said, well, it's something called local host. Is you can build this on your own computer and we can set it up and you can perfect it there. And you can use your own computer as your kind of development playground. And then when it's ready, you can then what we call deploy it to the web. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, so well, how hard that would be? Well, you know how optimistic AI can be. Oh, don't worry, I'll guide you, you know.
Oh, no problem.
Right,
Easy.
right. So at that point, I had read a lot about Claude and how Claude was really good at coding. So I said, well, what about this? I said, what if I describe the app I want and then you write prompts? Can we use Claude for the code? And it said, sure, let's go. So I started in on it through this it was probably, I'm trying to think now, it was a couple of months, I think, daily, back and forth and back and forth. And at one point, ChatGPT asked me, he says, would you like to pause for a while? You've been talking a long time. It didn't cut me off, but it did ask me to pause. So we went back and
Pause for
forth.
the day or
Yeah,
pause
like
like for a
stop,
week?
stop typing stuff in because you're overloading it, I guess. I don't know. But
Oh, okay.
it didn't cut me off, but it said, you've been going at this for a while. So because I kind of got addicted to the process. So that's what we did. I described what I wanted. And this was an app for homeopathy students. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, let me just see if I can. And I thought, okay, it'll just be a little flashcard app, you know. So we have something in homeopathy called the Materia Medica, which is a list of all the different homeopathic remedies and what they do, what they're indicated for, and what they're made from, and when to use them, and all this. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to have like a picture of the remedy and the name on one side, pardon me, and then they could click it or press a space bar and the card would flip over and then it'd show the stuff on the other side. And then maybe at some point there could be a quiz and this and that. So I described it and it said, okay, but whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's back up and make this
Let's
the
yeah.
simplest version, you know. So that was a very powerful thing for me to learn that I didn't really want to try to go out and build the biggest, hugest bells and whistles version of this thing immediately. I needed something just completely functional, maybe with just a handful of remedies, not even a place for people to log in, just a handful of remedies and a card that flipped over with some fields on the back. That was the
Like
original
let's see if
thing.
this is actually something that can work.
That's exactly right. And so after because it said once you have that working, then we can think about adding features. And
Right.
I think that was the best advice I got.
Okay.
And I worked through that a long time to even get that original thing to work. And then, and early on, it started asking me, it would give me choices like, oh, well, this would be the fastest way to do it. We can worry about this other thing later. And I made a decision early on that I wasn't going to say yes to those fast things. It assumed I was under some kind of deadline. It said, you'll need to
Oh,
show
okay.
this to your teammates. And I'm like, I don't have any teammates.
Yeah, no, I
I'm
don't.
not under a deadline. I'm doing this for myself. And once I had explained that, I said, I always want to default to best practices. Security is number one, always.
Hmm.
And then the most, I don't know how I described it, the most elegant, precise code that you can write. I don't want junk. I want
Right.
I
Yeah.
want it pared down. This is the simplest and best way to do it. I didn't know how to
Right.
put that into any kind of developer terms, but it seemed to understand that. And so, off we went. Wrote a prompt. I put it into Claude. Claude spit back, a whole bunch of code. I took that code, put it back into ChatGPT, and it said, well, this is pretty good, but no, we need this, we need this, and we need this. Go back and tell Claude I said, and then there's all of this other, stuff, do this and do this to the code. So we finally got a really kind of a nice master piece of code out of Claude. And then ChatGPT started instructing me on how to break it up into different folders, the front end of the application, which is what the viewer would see, and then the back end would be like the database of all the remedies and those kinds of things. So I learned about back end and front end, and then of course you got to connect those things too, you know. And then
Mhm.
it said, once we got far enough along, it said, we really need to kind of, because it was living all on my computer in folders. I mean, all my code was living on my desktop. And it said,
Right.
really need to back this up. So the first thing we did was it instructed me to get a GitHub account so I could make a repository. So, but the app was working at that point. We got pretty
Hmm.
far before we did that. And
So
then
it was working on your computer or
it was
also
working, no, it was
in the world?
only working on my computer.
Okay.
I mean, to me, it looked for all the world like anyone could see it, but of course they couldn't. It was just running
Right.
on my computer, but it was a fully functional app running on my computer. So the next thing we did was get that code to its own GitHub repository where it could be safe. So if I messed something up, we could go back to GitHub and deploy the latest version, and all was not lost. So
Good
I didn't,
advice.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't know anything about that. So, and then we gradually began to make improvements on it. An admin dashboard where I could go in and edit remedies and add new remedies. We devised a login where people could come in and subscribe.
Hmm.
But I never, but and I'm still in development. At this point, my next thing will be I'm collaborating actually with another homeopath who is very skilled and is going to help me beef up the content. And then I'm going to add a payment gateway, probably through Stripe. I did an intense security audit from the get-go on it so that I know everything is secure. That if even if people, because you've got to put your email and password in, I don't want those things to be available to anyone who could come in and try to harvest that information. So people's information is
Right.
secure. So it's been a lot of time on that.
Wow. And now is it actually live in the world?
It is live in the world, but I'm not really showing it to people
No,
because I'm
I
still.
wasn't going to recommend.
No,
I just
I didn't
wanted to
think so.
know,
I'm
like,
still in development. And interestingly, Denise, it also helped me pretty it up a little bit. It's like when you take your mouse or your cursor and you put it over one of the remedy cards, it will kind of pop out at you. So you know it. So it's called a hover lift. I had no idea what a hover
okay.
lift even was. It said, "Would you like to do a hover lift?" I said, What's that?" It said, "Well, this will make it so people, it's just a nice touch." And it
Hmm.
wasn't very
Hmm.
difficult to put in that extra code. So sometimes it kind of knew what I wanted.
Right.
And now it has a quiz. It pulls information randomly from the back of the cards. It has a study mode where you can go in and it'll keep up with your score and give you a little badge, that kind of thing. So
Wow.
so there's a lot of stuff, but that was not in the first version.
Right. Right. So when you were in the earlier stages, um, what, like when you got stuck, what was,
Yeah, yeah, I got
how
stuck a
were
lot.
you, dealing with that around with ChatGPT, and like what would make you stuck? What would get you stuck, I should say,
Well, a
with the
lot of
kind
times
of things.
something just didn't work, it just
Hmm.
didn't work. One of the things that happened was that ChatGPT would spit out like 10 things I'm supposed to do in a row. And I would start in doing them. Number one, go do blah, 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 only to discover that at the end of the big long list, it would say, but don't do those yet. Do this one thing first. And I'm like, why didn't you say so to begin with? So I learned quickly to say, do not give me a list of 10 things to do. Give me the one thing that we need to do now. So that was pretty helpful.
That's
The
good.
other
Yeah.
thing is it started trying to, and early on, it had me actually work with the code myself. I used an app called VS Code, which is very popular, and you can actually see the code. So it would tell me, it would say, go and look and copy in here and show me what the code is for this. And so I would copy and paste a screenshot or sometimes just the actual code. And so then it started saying, okay, go here and replace this. And I'm looking at these strings of code and
Like,
numbers, and I'm thinking,
where?
where? So I did learn to search it and did learn to do some of that, but sometimes it would give me too many changes. And you can mess it up just by leaving off a comma or a closing bracket or something, and it crashes your whole app. So I started saying, no, I said, I would copy and paste the entire section from one folder into chat and say, here's the entire code. Take all the changes we just talked about and replace those for me and send me a new piece of code that I can copy and paste into this folder. And that worked much, much better.
Hmm.
If it was
Hmm.
just a short piece and it was really obvious, then I can change it myself, but I'm not going to go in there. I tried it a couple times and crashed the app several times and it was terrible.
Like, it
So,
doesn't work.
right, right. It's like, you know,
Yeah, there's lots of little colons and commas and brackets and things in
closing
that
brackets and
code.
yeah, and
So,
it's very
yeah.
difficult to see them and to know. And that was a big frustration point for me a while. And it balked at doing that several times.
Hmm.
No, just do this. I'm like, no, no,
Mhm.
no. This is what I want you to do.
Reminds me of learning rudimentary HTML, back in
Right, right.
1996, when I was like, I need to change something on my website that, yeah, and I don't want to have to pay you
Well,
$50 to change,
exactly.
make
E-
something bold, and so, learning
Exactly.
how to do that, and then you leave off one of the closing brackets or something, and it's
Yeah,
like,
and it's
it
all
didn't
blown up.
work. Yeah.
Right. And so it was usually something simple, but
Hmm.
I just couldn't see it. It was just too, and I
Yeah.
worked on it way too many hours in a row. And at the end of those hours, I'm like, oh, my brain is fried. I better
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Before you got to, like the local host thing,
Yeah.
you mentioned trying some of the other platforms. Like, did you first start out? Because, when I hear vibe coding, for me,
Right.
it's like
Right.
I went to Lovable, and of
Hmm.
course, I didn't know what I wanted. So it doesn't really, you kind of discover what you want
Sure,
as
sure.
it's building, but then it'd be like, what does this mean? What was
Right.
your experience going on
No, I
to,
didn't
like, using
actually
that?
go to a platform at all. I
Oh,
just
you just skipped that
I
completely.
skipped it completely. And see, I didn't even know the local host thing existed. And ChatGPT just popped out with it. And it said, you don't have to use one of those platforms. And I'm always attracted to that kind of thing.
Right.
So
Okay.
I
Hmm.
thought, oh, really? Well, tell me about it. And once it started telling me about it, it said, no, we can just do this and you can see it on your computer. It was, for some reason, it was very appealing to me. And that's the road I went down. And then when I started talking to other people who had been using, and there's nothing wrong with those platforms, they're
Yeah.
terrific. They're terrific. But if you
It's
notice,
amazing.
if you notice them, a lot of them kind of look alike.
Yeah.
The interface looks alike. Some of them, even if they let you download your code, their proprietary systems make it very difficult, whether that's intentional or not, for you to deploy that code yourself on another
Sure, it's
platform.
intentional.
Well, probably so. It's kind of their proprietary thing. This way, I own every piece of that code that comes out. It still lives on my desktop in addition
Right.
to sitting in GitHub. So it's my code.
Yeah.
And I learned things. I never would have learned anything about the back end stuff and all that, because that's all taken care of for you, which is very
Right.
appealing for a lot of people. They don't
Right.
want to learn it.
Yeah, when you told me about that, it was like, well, that makes complete sense, because when you know what goes into creating something versus it just popping out as
Right,
a finished
exactly.
product, you have
Exactly.
no idea what went on behind it,
No,
unless
no.
you have the experience of knowing how to go dig in and look for it. But to learn to put it together from like the first bracket of
Right,
code,
right.
that makes it much more, well, I think then you have a stronger foundation to actually go use those other
Oh,
tools,
no
platform
doubt.
tools, because you
No
know
doubt.
what it should be doing. So that was really
Exactly.
appealing to me when you talked about that as
Right.
well.
Well,
So
the other thing that I didn't mean to run over what you were saying.
no, go ahead.
Okay. The
I'm
other
done.
thing, going back to the medical kind of experience, you know, we also had tools in medicine like X-rays, so you could see
Hmm.
into something, and see the bones basically. So I remember the first day that ChatGPT says, "Okay, I want you to go into your menu up at the top of your browser and open DevTools, and let's try to find out why login isn't working." I said, "Huh?" He said, "Go up there. It says Developer Tools. You can see everything," and it taught me how to use those developer tools very well. Okay, and after a while, I knew exactly what it wanted. It says, okay, because it would open up a split screen, and I could
Right.
see the code on one side, and I could see my login because we were having trouble with the login. And it said, okay, now try to log in. And then I would watch the code on the other side, and it would spit out the error. It says, what's the error number? Show me, go here, go there, tell me this, give me a screenshot of that. So it was using this. I said, oh, that's like an X-ray. It's like an X-ray of what's going on behind the scenes. And it said, okay, here's the problem right here. And then here's what we're going to do to fix it. So it's like, oh wow, this is just like having it was a diagnostic tool to find out what was going on. And at first I was
Yeah.
quite intimidated by using those. It was almost like, am I going to break? It's like, no, you're not going to break anything. You can't change
Yeah.
anything in
Yeah.
there. So that became like a lot of fun. Sometimes I would even go in and do it before ChatGPT asked me because I knew it was going to ask me for it and say, okay, here it is. Here's what does this mean? It says, oh, you've learned to do this before I even ask.
Yeah.
So that was kind
Well,
of
and it
fun.
is like you're learning another language too.
It is.
You
It
know,
is.
very, very much a new language, and that's good for the brain. Um, so let's going back, now that you brought up the medical
Yeah.
piece again, let's go back to how you're actually, have been building this, which you've explained, but how does like the soap, which you talked about in one of your recent articles on Substack, how does the soap process or the soap notes um, apply? How did you realize that applied and that you're
Yeah.
using that system?
I think the soap note methodology was one of the most important things I ever learned in PA school. It's still used as it's a way to document your diagnostic process in medicine. It's still used quite a lot by nurses, by clinicians, and it's the word SOAP, SOAP. The S is subjective. That's everything that the patient in the medicine, it's everything the patient tells you or the patient's family tells you. And it's like the history of what happened. Oh, an elderly woman comes in and she's looks like she's got a fractured ankle, and you ask her what happened. She said, "Well, I tripped over my kitchen rug and I fell, and now my ankle's swollen." So, but now you've got to look at you come to the objective. Okay, her blood pressure, her pulse, she's conscious, but her ankle's swollen. It's kind of bulging looking. She's got a pulse in the foot, so her circulation's okay. So it's not that much of an emergency, but it's big and puffy and etc. And so your assessment is, well, wait a minute, let's go see if this is just a really bad sprain or is it a fracture? So we're going to send her for an X-ray. And but then you'd think, oh, well, there's something. Why did she really fall on the rug, or did she pass out? Her pulse seems a little bit jumpy. It's not quite. Oh, then you find out she didn't trip on the rug. She passed out because of a cardiac problem. And you don't want to send her down to X-ray because she needs to be on a monitor. So you have to continuously revise, revise, revise. But it keeps your thinking in order. You're not constantly, even though you might be bouncing back and forth between subjective, objective assessment and plan, it keeps your thinking in some sort of, it's within a system. And you're not just out there trying to remember the million things that you learned in school, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
It's like you're focused and it's a way of focusing your process. And so when I started in with the AI thing, I just think I kind of naturally fell into that because kind of unbeknownst to me, I think that's the way I think all the time now because I just did it so for so long over so many years.
A very useful problem solving process.
Yeah, very, very. And it just lent itself. It doesn't lend itself as much to the initial stage. I mapped it onto the initial stage in the article I wrote in Substack
Hmm.
because I made the subjective, this was what is it that I want? But really it comes into real focus when you get into a problem while you're trying to code. Okay, it's like, okay, what is it that I can see? I can't get my login to work. That's kind of the subjective. Well, what's the objective? Well, you can go to DevTools and try to log in. I get this error number. Okay. Now we know it's not getting the data that it should have been getting. That's objective. That's a fact. So
Mm-hmm.
then I could take that to ChatGPT and say, hey, my login's not working, and here's what DevTools shows. And it would help formulate this. Okay, this is what's wrong. And now our plan is we need to put in this piece of code to fix it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautifully outlined there. So, if somebody is not technical
Which I wasn't and still am not.
and feels intimidated by
Yeah.
listening to what
Yeah.
your journey, then how would you recommend somebody starting? Like they've got an idea of something, but it's like,
Hmm.
oh, I would have to hire somebody or pay somebody or use one of these
Right.
other platforms because I have no idea how to make this happen.
Right. Right.
If you were recommending no, go with the local host, go with the coding, how
Hmm.
would you recommend they start?
Well, kind of like I did. You just go to your favorite AI tool, describe what you want, and see what happens. I mean, I don't, it wasn't any more complicated than that, although I did spend a lot of kind of hair pulling hours trying to figure it out. But I think now that I have, it's like I think the question maybe behind that is like people might be asking is like, well, why would I want to do that when I can just go to Bolt
Right. Yeah.
44 or Lovable and get this done and have an app and this is crazy because the benefits and I can only speak for myself, but the benefits that I have gained from learning to do this and working through this process have boosted my confidence like nothing I have ever done. I when I started seeing all the stuff about AI and started seeing people talking about building and this and that, and they would use these terms and things, and I always felt like a little kid that had my nose pressed up against the window of the department store from the outside. That glass was thick, and I would never going to be able to get in there. But after I have done this, I realize that a lot of these things are not that mysterious. That there's a language thing. When somebody uses a term and you don't know what the heck they're talking about. And those things can be learned. But the moment, I mean, I had weeks and weeks and weeks into this. The moment I saw that app come alive on the screen for the first time I'll just never forget it. It was like, oh my God, there it is. There it is.
I built that.
I built that. There's my flashcards. The images were beautiful. It clicked on them. They flipped over. There's the stuff at the beginning, and it was like, wow, wow, wow. It
That is
was
exciting
it was
to see that.
very, very exciting. And it immediately ignited another question in my mind. It's like, okay, if I can build this, what else can I build? or what else can I do in AI that I thought I was locked out of and I'm not, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Maybe I got off the question
No, no,
topic.
no. I think that was the right pivot to make. You consider yourself a builder with AI now, right?
Yes, yes, which I never would have, like a year ago, if you told me that, I would have thought, no way, no
Yeah.
way.
So when you think about building things, what's your criteria to like you? I imagine you have some ideas, but what's your criteria to actually build something, let's say?
Well, for me, it's something that I would be personally interested in. Um, because that for me, that's the payoff has to be there. It has to be something I'm deeply interested in. And then the second kind of thing was, would it be useful to others? I'm not sure. I want something to just live on my computer that helps me. I would like to be useful to others. The third thing is, could it perhaps be monetized? I think that's an important consideration for a lot of people. If you have something
Absolutely.
useful and beautiful and elegant and it solves a problem
Yeah.
and it could be monetized, that's a fantastic way that's a beautiful exchange of value, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And I also think that that's the direction we're moving in generally, especially, for those of us who are business owners, small business owners,
Right,
solo
right,
business owners, that uh, people want useful things. They want something that is they can use over and over again,
right,
that it's going to
right.
help them in their business or in their life or their health, whatever it is. And that's where I see the what's evolving here with AI is how can you create something useful, not just another piece of content or a PDF
Right,
or something that gets
exactly.
saved on the hard drive and never to be opened again, if ever.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, how many of those have you downloaded and not read? You
Right.
know?
Tons, tons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You think you will, but then you don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas if there's a tool that can be used that you can repeat over and over and it solves a problem in your business, it takes care of something that you've been doing manually or that you have it's just like you struggle over or something, that is something that people want at this point. It's
For
not
sure.
just
For
like,
sure.
don't be theoretical anymore. Give me the thing that changes my life or
Exactly.
whatever that helps me in my life. So that's where I'm seeing these things going. And to be completely transparent here, I've been practicing building with Ellen's process. She's been guiding me along the way. And I've been kind of getting off track with other things that I have to do for my clients and business. So I'm a little behind, but that feeling of just seeing, like, even though it's not anything you would want it to look like in the end, but
Right,
just
right,
seeing
right.
something that worked, that actually had a front end and a back end and they connected and it created something, that was pretty
Yeah.
awesome. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So my next step is going a little farther and building out the user experience, the UI, as they say, and
The
and
UI.
that
Yes.
in
Yes.
that language, that it's something that, like, oh well, maybe I could give this to someone and it would help them, right? Or sell it
Right.
to someone.
Right.
First, I would probably give because I would want people to test it. But anyway, so that's been really exciting, just to link back to how this conversation came about is that Ellen and I had a conversation about what she was doing, and I was like, I want that. Uh, and so she's developed some tools to help do that I'm
Yep.
testing to make sure that they work. And I've been going through her process, and it's really amazing, to be able to see how this all works and to do it, actually do it, and not feel intimidated or uncomfortable um, to create something that works. And I'm seeing people doing this all over. I mean, I follow dozens of people who
Right.
are building. I follow people on Substack who are building stuff that just blows me away. It's like,
Mhm.
wait, oh, I want that tool. I like that
Right.
tool.
Right.
That's a great tool. I want that. I'm spending my money to buy these things to make my life easier that these people have created, over the course of a week or something,
Right.
or they just thought of it and said, "Oh, I can just build that. Here's this thing that you can easily do this with in like 5 minutes." You're like, "Okay, that's worth $18 to me."
Yes. Yes.
So um, that's been exciting. So I have one more question that I remembered I was going to ask you. When you are working with, because this is something that I hear from a lot of different people. So when you are in that process of communicating with ChatGPT or Claude, are you doing that verbally or are you typing? Are you doing audio? Like Whisper is a tool that a lot of people use to do, talking.
I have not used one of those tools, Whisperflow, although I can see their benefit um,
Yeah.
a lot, and I may move to that, but I have personally just typed.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've seen some people use it. I'm like, Ellen, you should be using that because that would have saved you a lot of time.
Yeah, I go back and forth because of course I want to try every tool that, people
Right.
are like raving about. And so, I downloaded Whisperflow a while back and I like blah 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 blah. Oh, that's cool. That just showed up right there, right? Okay.
Right.
But I did when I first started my little experiment, I decided I was going to use Whisperflow with it and
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
like I just talked randomly with all the ums
Right.
and ahs and no, wait, blah, blah, blah. And it just sort of pulls it all together to
Yes.
something coherent. And
Right.
that has really, I don't always use it because sometimes it's just like, I just default to typing. When you
Right.
learned how to
Right.
type in high school, it's kind of hard not to default to
Sure.
it.
Sure. Sure.
But yeah, Kim Doyle is the one that got me, started on Whisperflow, and it literally
Right.
just hung out on my computer for a long time before I was like,
Well,
oh,
I,
let
I
me
saw
give
it.
this a
Well, I
try.
saw it demonstrated a couple of times, and I thought, wow,
Yeah,
because it just
yeah,
took all the ums and ahs out, and it was like, man, that would really save you some time if you were
yeah,
going at it. The
yeah.
thing, you mentioned the tools but the thing that helped me most was the development of some custom GPTs help to help refine. And I'm going to be using, in fact, I'm using one of them now in the continuing development of the Materia Medica app.
Mm-hmm.
Because the custom GPTs just put some guardrails
Right, right.
around what it can tell you, so it's not going to like go off the rails and take you in a direction you don't want to go. So I found those
Yeah,
things to be extremely helpful.
yeah. Well, I've used two of them that you built, two of those
Hmm.
GPTs, and they've been very helpful. Just keeping, on the straight and narrow. And, a couple times when it was just like giving me, instruction without any context, I'd be like,
Right,
you're making an assumption that I know what you're talking about.
right,
Oh,
right.
okay. And now it's very well trained to just like step by step by step by step by step. So,
Right. And
uh,
it's not gonna take you off into the weeds when you need to be over here on the lawn. Right.
right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's great. Okay. Do you want to give a few words about what we're planning?
Well, yeah, we decided that maybe others might benefit from this process that I kind of so laboriously hacked my way through. So we've decided to kind of team up together and do a live online 6 weeks via Zoom sessions to help guide people through this process. And you don't even really have to know, you don't even have, some people say, well, I don't even know what kind of app I would want. Well, we've got that covered too, because I built a custom GPT named Claire, who will help you refine an idea suitable. And then you take that idea to another custom GPT named Isabel, who will help you then formulate and refine that idea into a version one that's doable, that's buildable, and actually write you a prompt for Claude to put in and then go back and forth with you and teach you step by step how to do this. So what we're going to do is introduce you to these tools. They're part of you get the tools as part of the online experience, and then guide you through this process from start to finish of developing a version one app that runs locally on your computer in 6 weeks. Did I say that correctly? I think
Yes,
so.
you
Yeah,
did. Yes, yes.
yeah,
And I've been going through this process to test
right.
it out and have feedback, and like they don't assume I know what I'm doing.
Right. I had to go back and teach Isabel. It's like, no, we can't be making assumptions about what
Yeah.
people know.
So now it doesn't do that anymore.
Right.
So I've been
Exactly.
going through the system, and I'm at the point where I'm ready to make some refinements in my minimally viable version one
So
product.
you got it
Um,
deployed on your local
app.
computer,
Yes,
right?
it's
Yes.
deployed
Okay.
on and I ran into troubles too, and then finally I was like, okay, I'm stopping today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I come back and it's like, okay, what's the first step? And it's been really useful, and it's great to have a guide who've walked the path before you. That is something I've always advocated for, and Ellen has been a terrific guide. And so we decided, like, there might be other people who want to learn how to do this,
Right.
and so that's what we're going to do. We have a first to know list. We're putting together the final touches of what's going to be, so we don't have, like a fancy sales page or anything like that, but we do have this first to know list, and probably in the next week or so we're going to be
Hmm.
um, announcing our beta program. This is going to be a total beta
Yeah.
program. Just
Yeah.
to be very clear.
Right.
You will be able to create a minimal viable app.
Yeah. And in
And,
community
and
with a group too.
yes,
Like you won't be alone in this. Um, we'll go through it together. We'll have a private Facebook group in addition to the Zoom calls where you can ask questions or hey, say, hey, I'm stuck or whatever it is, and get to bounce ideas off other people as they go through the process.
yes. So we will include the link in the notes with this recording. And if you're interested and want to get the details, that's what we'll be sending out first is details. And then hopefully we'll see you there. I've talked to a couple people already who are like, "Oh, I want to learn that too." So that's a that's always a good sign when you're
It
going to
is,
do a
it
beta
is.
group.
Well,
Um,
and I just have to reiterate this idea of the benefit of this. The main benefit to me is not the app that you come out with on the other side.
True.
It's going through this process and proving to yourself that you can do this and that it just does something to you, to your confidence, to your ability to figure things out, to the idea that you're not and that you belong in this world. You belong in this world of AI. It's here, there's no going back, obviously. And this is a way to get in the door that's very different from what most people are doing. And it gives you an extremely different point of view, I think, which is very valuable.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay. Any final words about
Well,
people who are
I
considering?
hope, yeah, I hope if you're interested at all that you'll join us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see what people are going to create.
Okay. Well, Ellen, thank you for joining me today and sharing your journey from PA, ERPA
Right.
to AI builder.
Yes.
I love it. And it's exciting to learn about what you're doing. It's exciting to actually be doing it. And we'll see what happens, right?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Have have a good day, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everybody.